Hang on, I'm not going to lose this thought this time. I'm going to type this thought out and I'm not going to forget it. But I am listening to what you're saying. Clash of Clans, etc.
Hi, I'm Andrew Listen.
I'm Andrew Hart.
And this is the Mumbly Hour. Good evening. How's it going?
Good, you?
I'm good.
So you just like holding your microphone in midair right now?
I'll maybe keep this in. So we have technical difficulties this week because I am in the middle of nowhere and have a very crap internet connection and very poor equipment with me. So I'm going to have a fun job trying to edit this, but we'll do what we can.
You're like a man in a shelter during World War II with his little microphone that he's trying to get the word out using.
Yeah, if only I had some massive platform I was trying to make an advertising joke there and I couldn't.
Yeah.
I don't even have the guitar with me, so I can't even put in like little sounds like we did before when we did that one with the changing topics.
I like the sounds. So I'm not sure this advertising thing's going to take up a whole show. We'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll talk about other things as well.
So give me a reason that you want to do this and some sort of introduction to this topic.
The reason I want to talk about advertising is because we have different views on advertising and because I have often wondered for a world where advertising is not a thing.
At all. As in outlawed by all nations.
I think it probably requires further thought on my part.
I would agree. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not at all a fan of advertising.
I don't think you're alone in that opinion.
Hence people using adblock, yeah.
But advertising is greater than just pop-up banner ads on a website.
Yeah. So I'm moving back to London in 2 days. And last time I lived there, I got really annoyed by advertising, and it wasn't until you brought it up a few months after I moved away, and I kind of thought, actually, that doesn't annoy me so much anymore. And I realised that the reason that I felt so strongly about it at the time was because in London, if you're in central London, you just get bombarded by advertising in every situation. So if you're on the tube, then the advertising's all up above you and you don't want to like make eye contact, so you kind of look up there. If you are just on the tube platform, there's advertising there, or walking through the corridors, advertising there. I used to work on Old Street and there's these big giant billboards. There's billboards everywhere, and so you're just like, it's just right in your face everywhere you look, all day, every day. And so it bothered me a lot then, but now I've not really had that experience since leaving London, so I don't feel as strongly. But definitely in London, it did annoy me to the point of, let's just outlaw advertising and make it illegal, and please get out of my way.
So it's like that in other cities as well. So in the subway in Glasgow, it's the same on buses, and in almost all large cities, advertising is sort of there, because if there's a place for a banner or somewhere to go, that's why it's so prolific on websites, because if there's a place where an ad can go, somebody will sell that space. And that's just sort of how it's always been.
Yeah.
So you want to completely outlaw it entirely. So what would your immediate thoughts of the ramifications of that be?
All right. So I think this is twofold, right? I think at a higher level, companies that depend on advertising for their own revenue, such as magazines and websites and stuff like that, will have to find other sources of revenue. This is if advertising didn't exist. They would have to find other sources of revenue. They would have to replace that. Also, companies that create advertising would have to, go away, I guess, or become something else. But those are things that would happen. But I'm thinking more about how would the world change if we didn't have advertising. And I think the biggest change would be that companies that don't have as much money to put into an advertising budget, but create a better product, can get more of a reach to their product. So, for example, if you've got Just Eat, I know Just Eat advertises a lot on the tube. If you've got Just Eat and then you've got another app which is like Just Eat, which is actually better, it's a better experience. Let's say they have more people on board, but they don't have the advertising budget and they can't afford to advertise, or they're not advertising, then Just Eat wins out just on that fact alone. And so I think it often means that smaller businesses, which can often be the better product, don't get a chance to make waves in it. It's not totally fair, the entire space isn't just based on which is the better product, but it's all this massive layer on top of that of, oh, who has the best ad campaign, and it's almost more important than the product itself.
So in that situation, then how does a smaller company market and get the word out about their product?
What you mean in the world we have now?
No, in the situation where they're outlawed from being able to market their product, how do they stand up against a bigger company?
I don't know. I think both companies have to aim to get honest reviews and honest promotion. Maybe.
So, but they're not, if they're not allowed to promote the products, and if you're wanting them to get publicity through the press, but you've outlawed advertising, which is entirely run by the press, how do they reach out?
So maybe by word of mouth, maybe by people writing articles about them, and maybe that's how they spread. If you think about how, that's how Facebook spread, and how Twitter spread without any advertising. So that does work.
Well, we can maybe talk about those companies then. So companies where you're not selling a product, but you're selling a service. So if you look at Google, who are one of the largest companies in the world, Facebook is one of the largest and most valuable companies in the world. Twitter isn't, but it is a large platform. They are entirely reliant on advertising and make billions of dollars a year. Google's revenue was 93% based on advertising last year. How do those companies exist and push boundaries of like technology forward when they don't have a source of revenue because they don't have a product?
I think that becomes more difficult, doesn't it? And we had this discussion last week about subscription services and how if everybody went in that direction of needing to people to pay for a subscription, then it would all just filter down and none of them would really make as much money. So I don't know is the answer. I don't know how they would afford to pay for themselves.
So I found a report and it says that American companies spent about $300 billion last year on advertising across all industries. And that advertising supports about 20% of the jobs in America. And it supports about $5.8 trillion of economic output.
But I'm not arguing that it would be a small feat for it to go away. Like, we would end up in a different world and it would have ramifications. Of course it would, which is kind of...
But if you're talking about outlawing it, that's 20% of the job market in America that goes away.
I'm not talking about what ramifications would have. I'm just thinking, what if we had an sort of alternate society where advertising just didn't exist? Like, if you just ignore the initial impact of removing advertising from our society and just imagine a society that exists without advertising, what will be the things that will be most popular? Would it be the better products? And would everyone end up happier for it? So, for example, would Samsung do as well against Apple? And maybe they would, because Samsung doesn't have better advertising than Apple. But I think there's plenty of industries or plenty of markets where a certain product could do better than another product. But they're not. They're pushed down because of advertising. And each time that happens, I think that it makes the world a bit worse.
So your point is based just on the front of companies who want to sell a product against somebody else, but they don't have the marketing budget to... Like, I make a soft drink and I don't have the marketing budget to fight against Coca-Cola, so I'm never going to beat them.
It might be the best Coke in the world, but you'll never know. Yeah, it's not so much me feeling sorry for those guys, it's just me making the point that if they can't compete, they might have the better product, and it's about, what would make a better world. And I think it would make a better world if everybody had an equal chance at putting their product out there, and the best one always won, rather than which one has the bigger budget.
So why do you think the only way to solve that problem is by outlawing advertising? Why don't you trust in people's decision to make the right choice?
Because if I'm standing on a tube platform and I see this massive advert opposite for, let's say, I don't know, Just Eat. Let's say I saw a massive advert for Just Eat. I can imagine all of the people just go, oh, brilliant, Just Eat, and then they type it in. They never even find out about the other guy, and I just think that kind of publicity is crushing. And whenever I see those big adverts, I always think that is only there because some company has paid some other company some money to put this big ad there. It's not because the tube people, TfL, have went, oh, you know what we really like? We really like Just Eat. We think it's the best thing. and we want to put an ad up there.
Right, but the company didn't have that money to start with. Like on day one, Just Eat didn't have £100 million to spend putting ads all over the tube and putting ads all over TV.
Yeah, but the advertising's helped them to raise the money to be able to do that.
They have to have the money to make the initial investment. So they start off with a company that makes a product. They have to have a minor amount of success to have the budget in the first place to do the advertising.
Sure.
And then people vote with their wallets, and then the advertising has to work in order for people to spend the money and think that that's a good thing. So people must have had to find them in the first place. I think that you're painting a very, very extreme example, and I would argue that there's probably a better solution that doesn't involve just completely outlawing something. Your problem is very, very narrow. You're trying to solve the problem of letting small companies sit with big companies that have larger resources. And your solution to doing that is by banning a planet from being able to use advertising as a source of revenue, and you're cutting millions of jobs and stopping companies that are run by advertising are like all the news companies, television stations, tech companies, services are all run by advertising agencies. Like YouTube would go away, and that is trying to you think that is a just cause for solving what I would say is a smaller problem.
But here's the thing, every time I see advertising, I despise it.
But what about movie trailers? Would you outlaw movie trailers?
Interesting question. From existing?
So it's the same problem, but it's outside of your scope.
Yeah, so I'm not really, I don't really have anything against them coming up with marketing materials, i.e. trailers. It's just when those trailers would appear on TV between programs, and so you would see the trailer for one movie rather than a different movie just because somebody's paid for it to be there. But if let's say all movie trailers were on YouTube and they were just being spread by people linking to them and people promoting the ones that they think are the best, I think that's perfectly fine. As long as money doesn't come into it, I think that is...
Money has to come into it, because the buzz around films is generated by money. And they need to get themselves in front of an audience, and people are investing hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars in these films, and they need to get them in front of people, because you need to, the trailers are there to get people in seats. They're not there... They are an advertisement. They're there to get people to spend $10 or £10 to go and see the movie. That's the only reason that they exist. There is to build up hype.
So there is a question here of, if you don't have advertising, does that have a negative effect on the market overall? I.e., do less people go to see movies because they haven't seen any movie trailers because none have been advertised to them? And that I would say is a valid point. Anything where people say this is promoted content, and the only reason it's there, and in a sense I feel strong about this, the only reason it's there is because somebody has paid for it to be there, not because somebody has went, you know what the best mattress is, because they're paid to. And so it's not one human to another saying this is the best thing. It's just like a world run by money almost. And I feel like when what's put in front of humans as this is the thing you're looking at now because money, I think we've kind of got ahead of ourselves with that.
I still think that your point, the reason that this becomes a problem to you is a small issue that you have, which I don't think I completely get the root of your argument. I just passionately, strongly disagree with your solution to that problem, because I think that it's a very simplistic and not fully thought through solution, and I think there must be a more elegant and a more sophisticated answer to that problem to solve what you think is the issue, because I think that the ramifications of your potential solution are beyond ridiculous.
This argument is made a little bit more difficult for me by the fact that last week I sat here and said that I hate subscription models. It's like, what do you want, man? You're going to complain whatever we do.
Well, you need something. If you look at what it is that you get if you get enjoyment out of, you get enjoyment out of reading articles, because you talked about Pocket to me a lot yesterday. You get enjoyment out of podcasts because you listed your subscriptions to podcasts to me yesterday, and they're all ad-supported shows, and none of them would exist without advertising. So a huge amount of your entertainment source would disappear.
Yeah. You said something about a minute or two ago, and what was it? It was
probably accidental.
I think it's just gone from my head as soon as I start speaking. No, keep talking. If you talk, your voice might remind me of it.
My voice does powerful things.
No, it's not coming back to me. It's not coming back. This was on the tip of my tongue. I was going to make some fantastic point over.
I'm sure you were. I'm sure it was going to be the fact of the podcast.
So you were saying about how you think that I've taken this concept kind of too far and haven't really considered the ramifications of it.
Yeah, I think that you've got massively frustrated and you've just gone, that it just needs to all go away. I do agree that advertising can be obtuse, it can be annoying, it gets in the way, but people put a lot of money into research of advertising to see what's effective, and you get good ads and you get bad ads. I think that there is a space for good advertising, and I think that products, like good products, should have an ability to promote themselves. And I think that they shouldn't have to beg to a reporter to talk about them, because there are too many products for the amount of reporters that there are to talk about a product. People still need to be able to like help promote themselves, and they can't do that. Like if you don't have an audience, like I don't have an audience, so I wouldn't be able to do that. They should be able to go and be like, I want to get the word out, so I want to be able to tweet this and then promote that tweet so it sits at the top and some people see it, because if some people see it, they might think that the thing that I've built that I'm proud of is alright. And then you have the other people who are the heads of Clash of Clans who do that also. And I hear you typing. What's up?
Hang on, I'm not going to lose this thought this time. I'm going to type this thought out and I'm not going to forget it. But I am listening to what you're saying. Clash of Clans, etc.
This is a really good conversation.
Okay, cool. Right, I've remembered the thing I was going to say. What we do have is we have advertising standards. This is kind of a separate thing, but we have advertising standards. And I think that's really good. I think we need it. And it isn't defending the thing of, oh, this place advertises way too much. We need to make them pipe down and give everyone else a chance. But it is more about making advertising.
Stops you like advertising to kids and putting stuff in front of people that's inappropriate.
Exactly. It makes advertising be responsible. And not offensive, and I think that's really good. I think that's one of,
like, you can't advertise condoms and cigarettes to children.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best sort of things that we have in place.
There's a law in Sweden that says that you're not allowed to advertise to a child under 12 at all.
Really, that's interesting. So I wonder what effect that has. That would be good to look at. Which toys are they buying in that country? Which toy is every kid's favorite, as opposed to other countries where they are allowed to advertise, and how well do the other toys, which are less popular in other countries, how do they compete? Do they, you know what I mean? That would be an interesting sort of...
It'd be interesting to see the gender split too, because toys are advertised towards boys or towards girls. But if they're having to be discovered instead, it'd be interesting to see if it more leans towards what the child picks out as opposed to what the child is exposed to. Because children are massively impressionable, so there's a massive effect of what is put in front of them, when what they see on TV or what they see all over the place, that they are drawn to when they pick out stuff like that.
So it's quite clear that I think advertising has gone too far, right? And I think it appears in far too many places where I think a lot of nice moments are kind of spoiled by it. And so, but you think that my approach to this is very extreme. So how would you have it? If you had to like pick a middle ground here, do you have any idea of like where you would place that or what you would go for?
So are you asking what my solution would be to the extreme that advertising has gone to, where it's put everywhere?
Yeah.
I think that regulations of advertising still has a long way to go, but because you can't govern everything, and you still have like, there needs to be a freedom to put out what you want. But I still think that scummy ads on the internet are always going to bug me. Like, here's other articles on the internet that you might also be interested in. And clicking on those is a pain. And I clicked on a Google ad once about 6 months ago for a company that a friend of mine works for. And that ad has followed me around the internet ever since. And it's I'm not going to say the name of the company, but that's pretty much because it's only a Google ad I've clicked on in the past sort of 6 months. It is the only ad that I see. And I do random stuff in different browsers where I don't have ad block in all of them, because doing web development stuff, you normally have to turn these things off, and these trackers have to be allowed to come through to fully test some things. And that causes me to see these ads, and it is a bit of a pain. But I don't, because you can't trust people to make an ethical decision about what should and shouldn't be shown. I don't think it's an easy problem to solve, but I just don't think that outlawing it, I think that's like a really stroppy response. It's just like, I don't like it, it should just be over and let's just stop it altogether. I just think it's a very defeatist attitude.
maybe there should be some sort of rules in place about intrusiveness of advertising. And I think it should be a set of rules, because you can't just make one rule, which is don't be too intrusive, because, you need to be more descriptive than that, and you need to talk about it in different scenarios. But how about like if pop-up ads would be the first to go under this intrusiveness act, where you're not allowed to, you're not just not allowed to pop an ad up in front or behind, or have something where somebody clicks on a video or something and then an ad pops up when they didn't click on anything that would suggest that an ad would pop up.
I would be
basically tricking people into looking at advertising, and entirely advertising.
Well, have you ever come across a web ad where there's a delay? So you'll load the web page and then there'll be like a links or something like that, and you go to click or go to scroll through something, or there'll be targeted areas. So when you hover over it, you'll go to click on something and an ad will pop up that almost forces you to click on the ad.
I've always assigned that to just like the web page loading slow. I never thought that was intentional. I know what you mean. Like, let's say there's a video in a web page, and then just as you go to click it, a massive ad loads above it and pushes the video out of the way, and then you click on the ad instead. I always assigned that to be, or assumed that that was just, oh, the web page is slow or whatever, or the ad is slow to load, but I never thought it was intentional. And also, to be honest, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'm not sure why would an advertiser want you to click on their ad if you weren't interested in it, because surely they only want you to click if you've looked at it and you've decided that you're interested. So let's say that the US, where a lot of websites that I go on are based, introduced some new rules which said that you're not allowed to have intrusive advertising, and this is against the rules of advertising. Let's say, because who would have to abide by that is actually probably, and agree to it, is the people providing the ads, i.e. Google AdSense, or AdWords, or whatever it's called. So Google would agree to that, and therefore all of the sites that displayed ads would therefore have to agree to go by those rules. If we could enforce that sort of rules about non-intrusiveness, which, to be honest, Google itself has done, and their ads don't tend to be intrusive, but other companies are not so clean, I think that would go far. But I think the same can be applied to real life, where I just think there's just too much of it, and they need to pull it back a bit. You talked about how the world is supported by advertising, and the Tube network is one of them, where they make a lot of their money by people paying for each journey they make. But if they pulled all of their advertising, that is a big source of their revenue also. And so in order to pay for TfL, Transport for London, they would have to charge more for customers to ride on the tube. That's where that money would come from instead.
And transport in London is hardly cheap.
So that goes into your point about like 20%. What was it? 20% of people are employed in advertising.
Yeah,
and
so 142 million
trillion
jobs
of
in the
money.
States, and 20% of them are supported by advertising.
Right, but from these trillions of dollars that you describe, I kind of think, what are we giving up? So we're going. We basically go, we get Facebook and we get YouTube and we get to have those experiences, and so this ad stuff, we don't like the ads there, but we're just gonna accept it, and we're just gonna have it because fine, whatever. And that's kind of the attitude we have towards it now, is this kind of attitude of, it's a compromise, and we're just going to deal with it, and it's fine. And that is something that isn't ideal. And we're only doing that because it's such a big industry.
If you look at the greater good at what the technology industry does for progressing society forward, and the money that is used inside that industry and how it's trying to push people forward, I think that it's a harder way to make that case. But advertising exists outside of that industry. So if you look at TV or entertainment, which you haven't talked about at all so far, probably because it doesn't interrupt you, because you don't watch TV ads.
I watch TV mostly through Netflix, so yeah.
So TV advertising makes a huge amount of money, and it serves to make people rich. Whereas advertising in the technology industry for like these large companies is, whilst it makes those people, like a small amount of people, rich, that helps those companies exist, and what they're trying to do for society is probably greater than what the TV industry is trying to do. So that would
Right.
be something you should target probably first before you're targeting web ads because that's something that impacts you. But
I'm talking about web ads, and I'm talking about billboards and real life things, because those are the ones that I see. I guess a lot of people see a lot more TV ads than I do. The average person does.
so but again, like your examples are from what negatively affects you solely.
Here's the thing: nobody likes being presented with advertising. Like, I don't know. Maybe some people do, but generally, people block advertising if they can. And that's kind of where I'm coming from, as it being a, when I say that it's a bad thing, but it's something that society tolerates because of all of the good it generates economically, even though everybody hates it. And I just think we're putting up with it, and in an ideal world, I wouldn't have it be the case. Here's one more point, right, to this, and then we'll wrap up. I really like sites that research and promote the best app the best thing, let's say, in a certain category. So I'm thinking about apps primarily. There used to be a website called App Storm, and it's shut down now, and it's a shame, because what they used to do is they used to go, okay, let's look at all, let's say, TV schedule apps, and let's do some research and find out which one we think is the best. And I loved the site. It wasn't influenced by anything external, as far as I know. It only just presented you with the best app. And so whenever I was looking for an app, I would always refer to it. And so I kind of think, what if we had more of that, and more people paid attention to it, and it had more influence? That way, that would lessen the effect that advertising has over controlling the market leader in a particular market. Because if more people did research, or more people were able to get the information about which thing is the best, then I think we'd be in a much more fairer place.
I think it's a double-edged sword because those sites have to be supported somehow. I think it's a hard problem to solve.
Yeah. But I think people can, if advertising's going to be there, I think that advertising can be provided without any bias in terms of the journalism of it, and sites definitely do that and state that they're not affected.
Oh yeah, like totally. Like The Verge has an ethics policy where there is a segregation between the sales team and the reporting staff, so that they are not influenced by what's on sale. So you'll see a massive Samsung banner on The Verge, but that doesn't mean that they're supporting that company. It just means that there was a slot and they bought it. And even their executive editor, his wife, just got a job at Oculus. So next to his profile, it says he exclusively doesn't review VR headsets,
Right.
and doesn't talk about them because he has a conflict of interest because he's married to somebody who works for one of those companies. So that's where they draw the line. But that site still has banner ads and still has pop ads because they're a business, and they have tens of millions of people visit them, and they need to make money because it costs a lot of money to run that company.
Kind of off topic, but what you just said reminded me of something else where Cora Swisher is a tech journalist, and she used to be married, don't think she is anymore, to an executive at Google, and yet she used to do these stage interviews with like Steve Jobs and other big technology executives, and I always thought like it doesn't come across that she's biased in any way, or that she asks meaner questions to Apple guys, or she's nicer and more promoting of Google, but it's an interesting sort of relationship, isn't it? When she definitely has some sort of home bias, but yeah, she's in this position. It's interesting.
Yeah, she's married to Megan.
She's still,
but they're separated.
Okay, I'm up to date on my Google executive gossip.
She's CTO of the United States.
You what? Sorry.
She was the vice president of Google X, which is Google's hardware company, and then she left, and she's currently the chief technology officer of the United States.
She's at Google?
She is the chief technology officer of the United States, as in she works for the president.
Okay, that's fine. That just sounds like a very company sort of title.
Yeah, it's a company title.
That's just an odd title. Like, I thought you meant inside of a company, like she's in charge of that on the United States side.
She's the first female CTO of the United States. But you're right, that is a That is a company. That's a company title.
Is Obama the CEO of the United? Like, it's just weird, isn't it?
Is he the CEO of the United States?
Anyway,
he doesn't get to call the shots, so I doubt so. Does that mean that like the Senate and the Congress people are the board of the United States?
and the people,
Let's not talk about American politics because I do not know enough
the
about
shareholders.
it. We're the customers. We just get screwed over at every possible chance.
Yeah, and 20% of their revenue comes from advertising.
There's a good analogy to be able to be made to.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd go there, but we did, and it worked out quite well.
Didn't it? Right, so we'll round up.
Yeah.
So if you have any thoughts about advertising and how crazy any of our opinions are, you should let us know. Links, indeed. I don't have any links for this show. Do you have any links for this?
You could put in some articles about the different what country was it? Sweden?
Yeah, okay. I'll do that. I'll put in a couple. I'll find some things. I'll find some show notes. They can be found at mumblyhour.com/13.
Yeah. If you want to leave us a review, you can do that on iTunes, and it's really helpful to the show. Have we even got a short link for that, or is it just on the website?
There's a link to the iTunes on the Twitter account, and there's a link at mumblyhour.com.
Yeah, all the links, including the Twitter, are at mumblyhour.com. So there we go.
Cool. Subscribe. Tell people about it because we want new people to listen.
And we also
maybe not to this one because the audio quality for this one's probably going to be quite
tell them just to wait a week. Yeah.
Listen to the last one.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great day.
Have a good week.